Hello, hi everyone, welcome back to A Stitching Story. I'm Polly, and today I thought we could do a little knit and chat. I uploaded my first podcast and so many of you, well, first of all, thank you to everyone who watched it and commented. You guys are all so kind. It's so nice to feel so welcomed when you kind of put yourself out there. But many of you said correctly that I didn't introduce myself. So I thought on this early morning before work, I could, help you to get to know me a little bit better and we could get some knitting done together. Like I said, it is early in the morning. It's about 6:30. So we do have some very cozy lighting going on, but hopefully you don't mind. So what I'm working on, if you did watch my last podcast, I'll have it linked below if you haven't. I mentioned that I wanted to make a plain stockinette sweater with this wool of the Andes worsted that I had, and I very specifically said I didn't want any mohair, just wanted to hold that by itself, and you guys gave me great suggestions for patterns to make, and I did not do any of those. In fact, I did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. But your suggestions will still be helpful because I have a sweater's quantity of cashmere DK that I want, again, to hold by itself and make a plain stockinette sweater. So with that wool of the Andes worsted, I realized that I had, where's my ball of yarn? I had this colorway of Touch Me Mohair from WeAreKnitters, this kind of brown, and it goes so nicely with this wool of the Andes. And I thought I would re-knit the first sweater I ever made. I made that with superwash yarn from Hobby Lobby, which is like a big box craft store here in the United States. And it was my first sweater, and honestly, I'm very proud of it. It's super wearable, but the yarn isn't very high quality. The knitting isn't great, and I wanted to redo it because I love that sweater. And it is the sweater number 14 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which is just a boxy, oversized stockinette sweater with this chunky 2x2 rib and a split hem. I love me a split hem. So that's what we're working on today. I have the body and most of this sleeve finished. I'm actually probably going to start the ribbing in about an inch, I think, and hopefully we'll get there today. So I'm going to put a stitch marker where I'm starting to see how far we can get. We'll just put it there. Okay. So like I said, or like I didn't say in my first podcast, my name is Polly. I live in Missouri, on the east side of Missouri in kind of the St. Louis area in the United States. For those of you who aren't American, that is right smack in the middle. We have been having some crazy weather here in February. We always have a little bit of unpredictable weather. I think a lot of the Midwest here in the States do. We are not consistent like it is on the coast. But we had, gosh, the first week of February, it was like -degrees Fahrenheit. And then we got like 8 inches of snow, which is a lot for us. I know that's not a lot for people up north, but that's a lot for us for one snowfall. And then about a week later, it was 80 degrees. 80 degrees. Oh man, I got a knot in my yarn. It was crazy. We had like 3 days of the most beautiful springtime sunny weather, and it was just delightful. And then in one night, I mentioned this in my Instagram post, but and one night it dropped 55 degrees, and now we're back in the 20s. So just all over the place, which I feel like I should be used to. I've lived in Missouri my whole life. I went out of state for school. Actually went and lived in California for 4 years while in undergrad and college, and I loved it there. Talk about consistent weather. I loved California. But it just wasn't home, and Missouri was, with, even though it's a bit less exciting, it's less glamorous than California. When I was at school, we were 15-20 minutes from the beach, and my friends and I would go surfing before class. And it just was such a crazy, like, coming from Missouri, which is like the most landlocked place you can possibly be, just getting to the beach is a vacation. It was so much fun. But despite that, it just wasn't home, and Missouri was. Even though it's quiet, even though it's not gonna blow you away with the scenery like California will, I really do still love it, even with its unpredictable weather. But because of that little stint of warm that we had, it's like all the birds have come out. A lot of the early flowers and bulbs are starting to peek their heads through the grass, and you just get the sense that spring is on the way, even if it's now cold again. And it has been really hard for me to continue to work on my winter whips, in particular my Berlin scarf. I am not looking at her. She's looking at me, but I'm not looking. I just, you know, I try to get a fringe done here or there, but I realized I was steadily making my fringes shorter, which is not what I want. When I looked at the project photos of the Berlin scarf, one thing I said to myself was, Polly, you're not going to make the fringes too short. They're not going to be little nubs. You're going to make them nice and long. And here I am making them into little nubs because I'm tired of doing them. So I think I'm going to use Knee Knits and Originally Lovely's Fluffy Scarf Cowl to really try and motivate me to get that done before that finishes, which I think is on March 18th or something like that. So still got a few weeks to go. I know I can do it. I just need to do it, which is sometimes the hardest thing. But I also know myself, and even if I put a project down for a good long while, I am pretty consistent about picking it back up. So I don't mind kind of allowing myself to take breaks from things if I feel like it. Because I feel confident that if it is really something that I want to either do process-wise or I just want the finished product, that I'll get back to it. My spring whips have been bringing me so much joy. Again, I just posted them on Instagram. They're so warm. I have 2 yellow cardigans on the go and a crochet, half knit, but I'm in the crochet bit right now. A crochet project on the way, and something about crochet just feels summery. I don't know, and I'm just itching for summer. Yeah, so what else can I tell you? For work, I am an artist, actually. I'm a painter, and so I go to studio every day, and I love my work. You know, it's funny, I really feel like I'm living the dream. As a high schooler and a college student, and for a few years after graduation, I worked retail, I was a kindergarten teacher, I did, you know, a couple of odd things. I always felt like I had to choose between my creative hobbies because art then was a hobby. It wasn't something I was doing full time. And so in those precious moments of, spare time that you get, I had to decide, well, do you want to sew? Do you want to knit? Do you want to draw and paint? Do you want to work out? Do you want to, cook? And now that my job is painting every day, when I come home, I have no desire to continue painting. I do enough of that. And so it just takes one item kind of off the table. And it's been so fun to be able to really devote so much time to these other things that I love. I am a bit surprised, I'll be honest, that my hands haven't had more injuries. When I was a senior in college and I was prepping for my senior show for my art in art school, I got terrible tendonitis in my hand, horrible. It was so painful. And I remember just feeling like such a baby because it hurt so much. And it was very swollen, but it wasn't like I had gotten an injury like playing a sport or something. I went to a school that had very high level athletics, and my roommate was an athlete, was a D1 athlete, and I was over here like in tears because of my painting injury. And I remember I had to go get a brace that was marketed and made for gamers and people who got injuries from gaming too much, which no offense to anyone who loves to play, but I've never been that person, and it was just funny. And I couldn't paint at all, and so my senior show was I just got less done, which was too bad, but that was okay. But ever since then, I have been really trying to take care of my hands and strengthen them, and like massage them and stuff, because in a week they do go through a lot. They basically don't get any rest between painting for 40 hours a week and then knitting or sewing for, I don't know, if at least like close to 10 hours, I would say. But so far, I've been okay. Other than that one injury where, to be honest, I had just procrastinated doing my work. And so I was painting like 12, 15-hour days in the studio at school. So that was my own fault. But if any of you have any specific stretches you do for knitting, I do a couple, and I also have like a lot of stress balls and those little like hand clamp things to kind of strengthen the muscles in your hand that, I should probably do more of. But if any of you have any resources on that, let me know, because I want to use my hands for as long as possible. I know I have a sneaking suspicion that I will get arthritis in my old age. But I love making with my hands. Obviously I can't get enough of it. It's what I do all day. And I can't imagine not being able to do that. So I want to be proactive about it, and what do they call that? Where you just try to avoid, instead of waiting for an injury or pain to happen, but to just try to avoid it and mitigate that as much as possible. But being an artist does actually affect my knitting. in terms of sleeve length. So I'm not a abstract expressionist painter who has to worry about getting paint splatters over their clothes every day. My practice is pretty neat. Again, that is absolutely no knock on people who are. In fact, I am impressed by people who make that kind of art because I've tried and it's very difficult. Hopefully the frame hasn't changed too much. I apologize. Okay, my camera accidentally turned off, so the lighting has changed a little bit. The sun has come up a little bit more. But I think I left off talking about how being an artist does kind of affect my knitting, and that is in sleeve length. So if any of you watched my podcast or saw on Instagram, I recently finished my Chunky Dahlia, and I was a bit disappointed that the sleeves were so long. And if you look at the pictures, they're not that long. They're perfectly manageable. In fact, compared to a lot of product photos of sweater patterns and things like that, I think it's kind of trendy right now to have sweaters that come down almost to your knuckles and kind of cover your hand. By that metric, they are perfect. But even though I'm not a, super messy painter, I'm not, throwing paint at the walls or anything, I'm still mixing paint, squeezing it out, washing my brushes in Turpenoid, and, I'm handling paint. And I can't have sleeves that are too long or that can't be rolled up. So I kind of need sleeve lengths that are like bracelet length or kind of just true right at your wrist bone. And I do really want to wear my hand knit sweaters through studio, especially in the winter, because it has a concrete floor and a loading dock kind of garage door on one side, and so it's not the warmest place to be. It's not the best insulated, and so those sweaters are such a big help in keeping warm on kind of long cold days painting away. That's something else though, speaking of going to the studio, that I want to do. One of my kind of big goals for the year is to get better about wearing proper outfits to studio. When you have a job that you can wear your boyfriend's extra large sweatshirt and your favorite pair of sweatpants too, it's hard not to. You're so comfortable and it's easy. Hi everyone, this is Editing Polly from the studio later that day. I was just looking over the clips I filmed and I realized that from here on out, the framing gets increasingly more and more chaotic. I apologize. I was having trouble with my camera and my head gets cut off. We get all wonky. So if that bothers you, just focus on your knitting and just listen, because it only gets worse from here. I'm so sorry. But anyway, enjoy the chatting nonetheless. I think what most of us found during the pandemic or working from home is that just because you can wear sweatpants every day doesn't mean you should, and that it's just not the most conducive thing to feeling good about yourself or good mental health. And so I really want to get back to wearing my wardrobe. When I was a teacher, I taught at a school that had a pretty formal dress code for its faculty. And while you may have asked me if I liked that at 4 in the morning on a Friday when I had to pick out a nice outfit for the 5th time that week, I probably would have said no. But as a whole, I loved it, getting to wear my pretty things and feeling put together and, you know, feeling powerful or just, you know, feeling good about yourself. And I just don't wear my pretty things anymore, and it's so sad. So one of my goals for this year is to start wearing proper, beautiful outfits to the studio again. They do still have to be functional, but I mean, I wore all of my pretty skirts and dresses to work, and I taught kindergarten, and so there were a lot of children with runny noses and children who had pizza for lunch. And you know, clothing is meant to be worn, it's meant to be lived in, and I think you get stains or whatever, and that's just part of that item's life with you, and it's part of your life as well. So trying to think about making more functional, beautiful things and not just special occasion items. So maybe over on Instagram, I'll start a little series of like artist outfits. I'm not making any promises, but I think it would be something to help me, you know, just to reach my goals in that area. Something else I love about knitting is its ability to hobby stack. It's like habit stacking, but with your hobbies. So I found that I'm able to read while I knit. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. You know, as a child, I loved reading. Man, I would just get so lost in the stories and I wouldn't even know what was going on around me. And you know, you get older, high school, college, you start working, and there's just no time, you know? And with knitting, I'm already kind of taking the few moments during the day that I can to set aside and knit and not scroll on my phone or veg out in front of the TV. So it's really easy to just bring my Kindle along and get a few pages in while I get a few rows in. I just finished If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, I think, which I found out about on Book Talk, or since I'm not on TikTok, it's like Bookstagram or whatever you call it. But if any of you have good suggestions for books or stories that you have loved recently, please let me know. I'm always on the lookout for new stories and new books to borrow with my Libby app and read on my Kindle. I don't know if there's much else I have to tell you. I'm gonna finish up this row and then I am gonna have to go ahead and leave for work. I hope you haven't minded the lighting changes. The sun has really come up during this video, but thank you for spending this morning with me. I hope you got a little bit of knitting done. You can see my progress marker here. I got a fair amount. Not too bad for a little before work knitting session. That's about 2 inches or so. Hopefully this sweater will be finished in time for my next podcast, and I'll be able to show you the comparison between this new updated version and the first sweater I ever knitted. If there's any other questions or anything else you want to know, please feel free to leave a comment and follow me over on Instagram at A Stitching Story, and maybe I'll film a little Q&A if there are enough questions. And I'll probably put a little poll up on my Instagram story for that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.